You know that feeling, right? After hours online, you're just completely drained, even though you barely moved. It's that digital exhaustion, that sense that your brain is just, well, full. Today, we're going to look past the usual advice about screen time and really dig into the deeper psychological strain of our digital lives. And that brings us to the big question. What is the hidden cost of our digital lives? Because it's not just about tired eyes or needing a break from the screen. It's about this invisible cognitive and emotional load we're all carrying every single day. So here's our roadmap. We'll start by defining this hidden cost. Then we'll go inside what's called the digital grind with a couple of really fascinating case studies. From there, we'll connect all that to how our bodies actually process these feelings. And then we'll get into solutions, both in how we design tech and how we can train our own minds. Finally, we'll look ahead to the future of humane tech. All right, first up, the hidden cost of clicks. This is all about looking beyond just the number of hours we spend staring at screens and instead focusing on that invisible psychological strain that's building up behind the scenes. I think we can all relate to that feeling of digital exhaustion, being mentally fried. But what's really driving it? And more importantly, what does it look like when it's pushed to the absolute extreme in certain digital jobs? Let's find out. So now let's go inside the digital grind. We're going to look at two very different but equally intense examples of digital work. This is where we can really start to understand the cognitive and emotional toll when it's at its peak. Okay, so on one hand, you've got content moderators. These are the people on the front lines, dealing with this relentless combo of repetitive tasks, exposure to really disturbing content, and making constant high-stakes decisions. But then on the other hand, you have something much more subtle. Users of effective AI, that's emotionally expressive AI. For them, the strain is different. It's this slow buildup of, say, localized head tension or getting kind of fixated on trying to interpret the AI's emotions. And there's this weird emotional lag that just sticks with them even after they've logged off. This quote about content moderation just hits the nail on the head. It says the work is characterized by highly repetitive tasks with short cycle times, a structure often likened to call centers or assembly line work. Think about that. It's not just a job, it's a high-demand, low-autonomy digital assembly line. And that kind of structure has some very real psychological consequences. So we've seen the external pressures, but how do we actually feel them on the inside? That brings us right to our next section, listening to your body. We're going to dive into the science of how we sense and process our own internal world. And it all comes down to this really cool concept called interoception. Now, it sounds super technical, but it's something we all do all the time. It's basically the process of getting and understanding signals from inside our own bodies. You can think of it as your eighth sense. It's your sense of your body's internal condition. It's the raw data that our feelings are made of. Now, what's really crucial here is that interoception isn't just one thing. There are two key parts to it. First, you have interoceptive accuracy. That's your objective, measurable ability to detect what's going on inside. Like if you tried to count your own heartbeats without checking your pulse and you got it right. But then there's interoceptive sensibility. And this is your subjective belief, your own self-reported awareness of those feelings. And the gap between what you can actually sense and what you think you can sense, well, that turns out to be really important. And this is where it gets so interesting. Check out this study. Researchers took a group of people who had never meditated before and put them through just 3 days of mindfulness training. The results were pretty amazing. The group that did the training reported a big jump in their interoceptive sensibility. That's their subjective awareness of their bodies. Their scores shot up. Meanwhile, the control group, no change. What's wild is that their objective accuracy didn't really move, but their awareness of their inner state totally did. Okay, so if technology can cause all this strain and mindfulness can help us become more aware of it, how do we actually fix the problem at its source? And that takes us to Section 4, Designing for Well-Being. This is all about how we can build more humane technology right from the very beginning. So one approach for content moderators is called well-being-centered UX, and it has 3 main pillars. First, designing for effectiveness, just making the tools work better to minimize cognitive load so the job itself isn't so frustrating. Second, designing for connection, building in features that help create a sense of community and purpose. And third, designing for resilience, actively trying to reduce harm and help people recover. And hey, these aren't just abstract ideas. These are things you can literally build into the software.
You could have content-soothing options like blurring or muting harmful stuff. You could have automated reminders that say, hey, time for a break, or tools to quickly get a second opinion from a coworker. You could even have dashboards that show the positive impact of their work. These are all practical ways to design well-being right into the workflow. Now let's switch gears back to our other case study, that strain from dealing with affective AI. For this problem, researchers have come up with a specific model called the R-CAGE framework. And the whole goal here is to design the AI's emotional output in a way that protects users from getting emotionally overwhelmed or cognitively overloaded after talking to it for a long time. So R-CAGE is built on 4 pillars. First, controlling the rhythm of the AI's emotions so you don't get worn out. Second, structuring all the sensory information, the sights and sounds, so it's not just a fire hose. Third, guarding your cognitive frame, basically helping you avoid getting stuck on one single interpretation of the AI's mood. And finally, making sure the AI's responses feel aligned with your own sense of self, which actually helps you bounce back after you log off. So we've seen how to build better tools. But what about building up our own internal skills? That's Section 5, training our inner senses. This is all about how we can develop personal resilience by strengthening that mind-body connection we were just talking about. And this is where everything really clicks into place. Remember that mindfulness study? Well, this diagram shows their biggest finding. They saw that mindfulness training reduced people's anxiety. But why? This model shows that the effect was explained, or mediated, by that increase in interoceptive sensibility. In other words, becoming more aware of what was going on inside their bodies is what actually caused them to feel less anxious. Better body awareness directly led to lower anxiety. And just look at how powerful this connection is. More than half, 55.8% of the drop in anxiety was explained by that improvement in body awareness. It wasn't just some random side effect. It was a primary driver of why people started feeling better. Okay, so let's pull all these different threads together in our final section, the future of humane tech. What we've seen are 2 really distinct but totally complementary paths forward for making our relationship with technology a whole lot healthier. So, when it comes right down to it, creating a healthier digital future isn't about just one thing. It's a dual approach. We have to create technology that is designed from the very beginning to respect our psychological limits, and at the same time, we have to cultivate our own inner awareness so we can navigate that technology wisely. And that really leaves us all with a pretty fundamental question to think about. In a world where our tools are getting smarter, more emotionally expressive, and more demanding of our attention, how do we stay human?